It's like you're gonna say auto, but just say Aurelio. Yeah, there you go. Aurelio.
Good afternoon. Welcome to February's University Hour, but also welcome to the speaker series for Sacredness of Creation today. What an honor to be here today. Did you want me?
No.
Okay. I am going to introduce our speaker for today, a native Angelino and Jesuit priest from 1986 to 1992. Father Boyle served as pastor of Dolores Mission Church in Boyle Heights, California. At that time, it was one of the poorest parishes in Los Angeles. They also had one of the highest concentration of gang activity during that time. Father Boyle witnessed a lot of devastating impact of gang violence on the community during the so-called decade of death that began in the 1980s and carried into like the 1992, with culminating around 1,000 deaths. In the face of law enforcement tactics and criminal justice policies of suppression and mass incarceration as the means to an end of violence, he, the parish, and the community members adopted what is a racial approach at the time, which is treating gang members as human beings. In 1988, they started what would eventually become Homeboy Industries, which employs and transforms gang members in a range of social enterprises, as well as providing them with critical services to thousands of men and women who walk through the doors every year just to improve their quality of life. Father Boyle is the author of the 2010 New York Times bestsellers, Tattoos on the Heart, The Power of Boundless Compassion. His book, Barking to the Choir, which is located out front, The Power of Radical Kinship, was published in 2017. He has received the California Peace Prize and has been inducted into the California Hall of Fame. In 2014, President Obama named Father Boyle's Champion of Change. He received the University of Notre Dame's 2017 Laterre Medal, the oldest honor given to American Catholics. Currently, he serves on a committee as a member of the California Governor's Chair Newsom's Economic Job Recovery Task Force as response to COVID-19. Today, he brings with him Pablo and Aurelio, and they will be speaking to us first. And so please join me in welcoming them as they share from their hearts. It's all yours.
Good morning, guys. How you guys doing tonight? I'm from Los Angeles, so it's a privilege to be here all the way in Pittsburgh. I never flew, so it's kind of, nerve-wracking. But I want to start off a little bit by talking about my life. I started off, born and raised in Los Angeles, California, like South Central to be exact. I came from a broken home with a family, with parents always fighting, domestic violence, and my mom left my dad at a young age when I was about like 10. My mom was working all the time, so I didn't really have no supervision besides my older brother that was a gang member. So I just followed in his footsteps. And then at age 14, I got recruited into a gang, trying to fulfill the loss that I didn't have, the family that I never had. I was trying to fulfill it. I've been through a lot of trauma experiences, from fights and shootouts with rivals, landing me my first trip in juvenile detention at age 15 for a gun possession, drug violations and stuff like that. Then just growing up at age 18, still in bad steps. I had my first daughter at age 18 and dropped out of high school at a young age. Then I lost my daughter to the system due to me, gangbanging and stuff. And Then I was in and out of jail. Then I got out of jail trying to better myself and decided to look for change. And you know, looking for change was hard. I didn't know where to start. So I started trying to attend drug counseling and counseling classes to get my daughter back. And thanks to God, I got her back. Trying to change, and without my mother, I wouldn't be able to do it because she was the only one that was there for me. And you know, after that, I heard about Homeboys. But before that, I did like 3 years in jail, in and out of jail, and I fought a very serious case that made me want to change my life, And I thought about it twice, and I was just like, I want to do better, change for my family. And I heard about Homeboys Industries through my probation officer. He told me that he'll get my sentence reduced or whatever, so I decided to go. And I didn't know what to expect, And Father G and Homeboys, welcomed me with open arms, didn't judge me. And I felt at home, The love and uniqueness of Homeboys attracted me. Seeing other gang members working together, I never seen nothing like that before. And just the love that was there. Instead of somebody banging on you, they tell you good morning, how's your day, and want to give you a hug. So it made me feel with a purpose there. Being at Homeboys, Father Greg has taught me, given me a lot of hope, showed me to never give up through my trials and tribulations and what I go through, And I've been at Homeboys for about to be 2 years now. I'm bettering myself, going to graduate from high school, and I'm working at the bakery I'm working at the bakery right now in Homeboys Industries, and trying to better my life and for my family and that's about it. But thank you guys for hearing me out. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aurelio. I come from Los Angeles, South Central too, and the flight was scary too. I thought it was an earthquake on the plane when it was going up, because it was shaking, and I was just, I got a little traumatized, but then it just started going straight. So everything felt like it was just riding on the car, But I started off playing sports and stuff like that because that's what I was into, and they gave me a taste of violence, and I fell in love with it. And I would do things bad, but I'll do it real good. And it came to a time where I lost my brother. They shot him in the back of his head, and they felt like they took me too, because he was my leader. He was. We will watch the Laker games together all the time, So the Lakers are still going, and it still feels a little weird when I'm watching the Lakers, and but I feel sometimes like his presence is right there, trying to say like, what's up, So I'm like, I get a little emotional, and then, it starts to kick in, but sometimes I feel like I'm a little slow because they tried to shoot me in my head, so I don't know if you guys can see it. They just scraped me, So I don't know, that affected me and stuff like that. I can't hear from this year because of that, because all the shooting and stuff like that, and then they snapped me right here. But I'm still here. I didn't give up, Through that time, I was just really thinking like, it's not the way to live, Because at first we were initiated. I had all my family from the gang, and I thought that was the way to live, And now I took a walk. I was taking a long walk because I would live by Slauson. Well, I caught one bus, and then I started walking like maybe about 4 miles, and I seen Homeboys. I'm a homie, so I was like, man, let me check it out. It's Homeboys right there, So I walked in, and yeah, the homies, they welcome me. They're like, hey, what's up? Good morning. How you doing? Come in. Like, what can we help you with? I'm like, well, I'm trying to find my way out, trying to find a new life, you know. Because I already did this so many times and it's not taking me nowhere. It's just, I'm just digging a hole. And as I'm digging it, it's getting harder to climb out. But they opened the doors for me too, and, you know, I'm here. And I love it, and I'm happy because, I don't know, it's just been going good, you know? and I just thank my mom too and my dad for sticking around and not giving up on me. We will always have to move house to house, but I think that's what helped me get stronger at the time because I couldn't help them pay rent. But the homies that are my OGs right now, I don't talk to them no more, but they taught me how to make some money at an early age when I was 7 and 8. And that's how, I mean, I helped them hide guns and stuff like that. I helped them give on guns. And that was just me, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, you know, and because that's the stuff we were initiated to. And in some way, that's how I found how to help my mom and my dad. But it was still not enough, you know, because we'll still get an eviction notice and stuff like that. So, but now, you know, God said he will never give you something you can't handle. And that's what I've been learning. And that's what I'm doing right now. And I thank Father G for giving me this chance. And life is beautiful. Life is beautiful now. Life is beautiful then because the stuff that I've been through, yeah, there was bad stuff too, but then there was good times too, you know. I don't regret a moment because I'm still here and I made it. And I thank God and G every second. And thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it was their first flight ever, so they were, as we say in Spanish, paniqueados. You know, they had said that the night before, we did not sleep a wink. So it's hard to sleep on planes if you're not used to it, but so anyway, and we had to change planes, so then it was a whole other experience in Dallas. So anyway, it's the privilege of my life to know these two characters, and I'm really happy they came with us. And we went to, what was the name of the place? Sullivan's Steakhouse last night, and had a big old fat steak. So it's been great. A program note, I'm at least for my part, I'm going to say completely different things this afternoon from tonight. So if you're a double dipper, it won't be the same talk. You know, the prophet Habakkuk writes, the vision still has its time, presses on to fulfillment, and it will not disappoint. And if it delays, wait for it. And so we all, you know, have a vision of how we want the world to look differently. And we want to make that happen. You know, I apologize if some of you have heard me before. Somebody was saying before, you know, YouTube is the bane of my existence, you know, because they've heard my talks a million times. And I'm remembering I was invited once to speak at this foster grandparent gathering in Orange County, and I had spoken at it the summer before. So 2 summers in a row, they invite me to be the keynote. And I go, wow, why are they inviting me? It's basically the same people, you know. And afterwards, a grandmother came up to me, and I think she liked the talk because she had big tears in her eyes, and she grabbed both my hands, and she said, I heard you last year. It never gets better. So kind of hoping she misspoke there, but. So, we want to kind of somehow connect our life and our world to a larger love. And Mother Teresa diagnosed the world's ills correctly when she suggested that the problem in the world is that we've just forgotten that we belong to each other. So how do we stand against forgetting that? How do we imagine a circle of compassion and then imagine nobody standing outside that circle? How do we together, decide to dismantle the barriers that exclude? And so the invitation is always the same. It's about standing, not taking the right stand on issues, but standing in the right place. How do we inch our way out to the margins? Because it's the only way the margins get erased. And so we stand there with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless, and we stand with those whose dignity has been denied. And we stand with those whose burdens are more than they can bear. And every once in a while, wow, what a privilege to be able to stand with the easily despised and the readily left out. Truly, we get to stand with the demonized so that the demonizing will stop. And we stand with the disposable so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. And of course, what we want to do, the goal, is to create a community of kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. At Homeboy Industries, our goal is not to create a community of behaving people, but a community of beloved belonging, which is really quite different. Or as Jesus would say, that you may be one. One of the great privileges of my life was knowing Cesar Chavez as a friend, and he was one of the best listeners I've ever been in the presence of. If you were ever talking to him, nobody else existed. He was laser beam focused, and he was never looking over your shoulder to see if the mayor or somebody important was on the approach. It was kind of remarkable. But famously, a reporter had commented to him once and said, "Wow, these farm workers, they sure love you." And Cesar just shrugged and smiled and said, "The feeling's mutual," which of course it is. We go to the margins because we want to declare that separation is an illusion, that there is no us and them, there's just us, and that you go to the margins, which is a place of exquisite mutuality, where the feeling's mutual. And the homies have taught me that. In fact, gang members over the last 40 years have taught me everything of value, and I'm just so deeply grateful to them. But one of the things they've taught me is how to text, and so I'm eternally grateful to them because I'm really quite dexterous at it, and I'm LOL and OMG and BTW, and the homies have taught me a new one, OHN, which apparently stands for oh hell no, which I use constantly, and I know autocorrect is, I'm not alone in being vexed by it. There was a homegirl who texted me today, but this had happened some years ago where her name is Bertha, and she's a tough cookie. Oh my God, been to prison and shot caller for her gang, which is rare for a female, but she was. And she texted me and she said, "Where are you at?" And it was a Sunday, and I said, "I'm about to speak to a room full of monjas," and monjas is Spanish for nuns, sisters, religious women. I said, "I'm about to speak to a room full of monjas," and I pushed send, and autocorrect told her that I was about to speak to a room full of ninjas, which she thought was pretty darn interesting. Even though there's a 3-hour difference with LA at the moment, good God almighty, from early morning, homies are always hitting me up. Pediches is what we call it in Spanish. They're always asking for money. And then whatever it is, my car note or my rent. So homie texted me and he said, I'm $100 short on my rent, and I just didn't have it. So I texted him back simply, things are tight. And I pushed send, and autocorrect told him, thongs are tight. And he wrote me back, sorry to hear that. What about my rent? So I tell you all that to tell you this. It's at 8:50 every morning. I got an announcement of it here. We have a morning meeting, and that has thought for the day, and we gather, and there's a prayer and announcements, and we sing happy birthday, and it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of our 500 employees gathered, packed into this reception area, and then on our different sites, it's on a big screen, so everybody's watching from Homeboys Silk Screen or the recycling center or wherever, our school, youth reentry center also. So right after the morning meeting, I grabbed Manuel and Poncho, and I needed them, like these two guys, to go with me. We're going to a school in Palm Desert to speak to students, and Manuel's in the front seat, Poncho's in the back, and we're only like 10 minutes on the road when Manuel gets an incoming text, and he reads it to himself, and he chuckles. And I said, what is it? He goes, oh, it's dumb. It's from Snoopy back at the office. Well, I just seen Snoopy. He was at morning meeting, gave me a big abrazo. Snoopy and Manuel at that time, they ran the clock-in room where they clock in hundreds and hundreds of rival enemy gang members, and it's a tough job. I would not want it. And I said, well, what's Manuel say? And, oh, it's dumb. Hang on. Let me, here it is. Hey, dog, it's me, Snoops. Yeah, they got my ass locked up at county jail. They're charging me with being the ugliest vato in America. You have to come down right now, show them they got the wrong guy. Well, I nearly drove into oncoming traffic, and then I realized that Manuel and Snoopy are enemies. They're from rival gangs. They used to shoot bullets at each other, because I remember. But now they shoot text messages. And there's a word for that, and the word is kinship. How do we obliterate once and for all the illusion that we are separate? And anybody with a pulse knows that this is the order of the day. It's the thing we most need to address in our country at the moment. So Homeboy was started a long time ago in 1988, during the time I was assigned as pastor of the poorest parish in the city. It was smack dab in the middle of two housing projects, Pico Gardens and Aliso Village. At the time, they were, the largest grouping of public housing west of the Mississippi. We had 8 gangs at war with each other. And that led the LAPD to name my parish as the place of the highest concentration of gang activity in all the city. So if LA was the gang capital of the world, my parish was the gang capital of Los Angeles. So I buried my first young person killed because of this sadness in 1988, and I buried my 257th last Thursday, a young man named Marco who was stabbed to death. Not all of them from that community, obviously, but I know a lot of gang members. I get asked to do funerals. So the first thing we did was we started a school because there were so many middle school, junior high age gang members who had been given the boot from their home school. Nobody wanted them. So they were wreaking havoc in the middle of the day. They were writing on the walls. They were violent. They were selling drugs. So I remember walking out to this one part of the projects where all these little kids were, and I would kind of isolate them one at a time, and I'd say, hey, if I found a school that would take you, would you go? And to my surprise, every single one said, yeah, I would. And then I couldn't find a school that would take them, so that kind of forced my hand a little bit. And And then, so right across the street from the church is our parochial school, grades K to 8, occupying the first 2 floors of this huge box cement building. But the entire 3rd floor was the convent where the ninjas lived. And so I gathered all the nuns together in the living room, and I sat them down and I said, hey, would you guys mind, moving out, and we could turn the convent into a school for gang members. And I remember they looked at each other and they went, sure. And that was the entirety of their discernment process, And so we were off and running, and gang members came in large numbers to the church, not to services, but to the property, which created something of a disconnect, So if you can imagine all these gangsters walking up the stairs, passing all these kids, parochial kids in uniforms, and it was quite something. And so parishioners would kind of sidle up to me, and they'd say, hey, aren't churches supposed to be hermetically sealed, good people in and bad people out, which I thought was a good gospel challenge. And so in short order, gang members started to say, if only we had jobs. And which I look back on that now, and if you listen to gang members, they'll ask for jobs. But if you know gang members, you know that it's about healing, which is why for the first 15 years we were job-centric. And now for the last 15 years, 20 years really, we have been healing-centered. And the principle was, an employed gang member may or may not go back to prison, and an educated one may or may not. But then it became our absolute guarantee. A healed gang member will not reoffend, period. And so every homie that walks, and homegirl who walks through the door at Homeboy comes barricaded behind a wall of shame and disgrace, and the only thing that can scale that wall is tenderness. And every single man or woman of the 10,000 who walk through our doors every year comes with what psychologists would call a disorganized attachment. Mom was either frightened or frightening. And you really can't calm yourself down if you've never been soothed. And so gang members find a sense of a sanctuary, really, a safe place where they can be seen and then cherished. And then they become the sanctuary that they sought. And then they go home to their kids and they present that sanctuary to them, and suddenly you've broken a cycle. But in the early days, they said, if only we had jobs. So we went, myself and the women, because the parish was mainly women with children, not a lot of men in the projects. And so we marched around the factories that surrounded the housing projects, trying to find felony-friendly employers, and it wasn't so forthcoming. So we just started stuff, maintenance crew, landscaping crew, a crew to paint out graffiti, a crew to build our child care center on the church property, all made up of rival enemy gang members from the 8 gangs. Then in '92, which feels so long ago, after the verdict, the Rodney King police officers were acquitted, every pocket of poverty ignited in Los Angeles, except for the poorest pocket, my parish. So the LA Times came down and asked me, why do you think that was? And, I thought, well, I don't know, but I think part of it was because we had 60 strategically hired gang members from 8 different gangs who had a reason to get up in the morning and a reason not to gangbang the night before. And more to the point of your question, a reason not to torch their own community. So the next day, the article appears in the LA Times. Well, the following day, I'm summoned to the Beverly Hills office of a movie producer named Ray Stark, who happened to have $500 million. So I went to his office and he said, "How should I spend my money?" Yikes, when I look back on it now, I can see I woefully undershot my request. You know, when I was young, I had hair. But I said, across the street from the school is an abandoned bakery. You could buy the bakery. And we could, put hairnets on rival enemy gang members. You could repair the ovens. They have them, but they don't work. And we could call the place, Homeboy Bakery. And that was the extent of my business plan. And he said, sure. So we were off and running. A month later, we started Homeboy Tortillas in the Grand Central Market. Once we had plural, we it changed our name from Jobs for Our Future, which is what we used to call ourselves, to Homeboy Industries, as if there was any industry involved here. And not everything worked, I'll be the first to admit it. Homeboy Plumbing really was not hugely successful, Who knew? People didn't want gang members in their homes. I did not see that coming. And now nobody ever intends to do such a thing. We backed our way, evolved our way into now becoming the largest gang intervention, rehab, reentry program on the planet. We didn't intend to do any of that. Now we're in our 4th location in Chinatown, a huge, huge building that has we have 11 social enterprises. We have 2 restaurants, one at the Delta Terminal, one at the American Airlines Terminal in Los Angeles. Homeboy Electronic Recycling, Homegirl Cafe, Homeboy Homegirl Merchandise. We have Homeboy Diner, the only place you can get food at City Hall. Bakery, what else am I missing? Silk Screen, Homeboy Silk Screen. Which one? Apparel. Oh, yeah, that's part of merchandising. Anyway, so we have all that. But the Homeboy Bakery was kind of different because the problem in the gang world was there was no off-ramp. There was no exit ramp. So if a kid like these 2 guys would say, I'm tired of being tired, okay, now get off the freeway. How do you do that if there's no exit ramp? That's basically it. But Homeboy Bakery was kind of the first exit ramp, because even if a gang member wasn't a part of it, it's a little bit like a drug addict knowing that there's something called rehab out there. I may not be ready for rehab right now, but knowing it galvanizes the imagination a little bit. And that really did happen. There are only 3 profiles of kids who join gangs. There's not 8, there's not 23. There's only 3. There's the despondent kid who can't imagine his future, so his present isn't compelling. And if your present doesn't hold you, then you don't care whether you inflict harm, and you don't care whether you duck to get out of harm's way. The second profile is the traumatized kid, really damaged and endured a lot, torture and terror, and hasn't been able to transform his pain, so he keeps transmitting it. And the third profile of the kid is the mentally ill kid. But it's all on a continuum of severity. Some kids are more traumatized than despondent. Some are more hopeless than mentally ill. I was somewhere on the East Coast, and a chief of police handed me a brochure, and it was one of those brochures that you hand out to parents, telltale signs that your kid is gravitating perilously close to gang involvement. And as you opened it, there was this kind of statement writ large, and it said, the number 1 reason why kids join gangs, excitement, it said. And I thought, if you asked me to write 25 reasons why kids join gangs, excitement wouldn't be on my list. No kid is seeking anything when he joins a gang. Every kid is fleeing something. There are no exceptions there. No hopeful kid has ever joined a gang in the history of the world. So it's not about right and wrong, it's about hope and healing. And this is where all of you come in. So Homeboy Industries was kind of this model thing and very odd. And so we had many, news crews and, we had big old buses, Japanese tourists. We've come to see your bakery. And we had Prince Philip and his business advisors come. And so it was kind of a big deal when it opened. And I remember there was a guy named Roman who was the biggest drug dealer I knew in the projects, and I knew all of them. And he always resisted any offers I extended to him for help, until one day he said yes. And in recovery, gang recovery is no different. They always say it takes what it takes. For a gang member, it can be the birth of a son. It can be the death of a friend. It can be a long stretch in prison. It takes what it takes. I'm not sure what it was with this guy, Roman. It may have been the birth of his daughter, Clarissa. So anyway, he said, I'm ready. So he moves into the bakery. Well, he was a natural leader. So I made him, he didn't just work with his enemies, he supervised them, which is a great deal more difficult. He was the foreman. But part of what he needed to do was he had to, all these endless news crews and people filming and tour groups, he had to greet them. Oh my God, he hated this. And so one day we were waiting for this big busload of farmers from Central California, wealthy people who own large farms, but they wanted to see the famous Homeboy Bakery. I'm standing there with him. He's having a bad attitude day. I'm saying, get over it. And then the bus pulls in. And I'm waving, and I'm saying, you can park over there. And then he sees that on the bus it has one of those microphones. It's a sleek, slick, ultra-modern bus, but it has a microphone at the front of the bus, and he pretends he's the tour guide. Welcome to Homeboy Bakery. Please keep your hands in the bus at all times. Watch gang members in their natural habitat, and they are not yet tamed, and all this kind of nonsense. Like, cállate, cabrón. And so they get off the bus, and he takes them in there, and I go to my office. I never give tours. And so when I came back later on in the afternoon, I said, hey, how'd that tour go? And he goes, damn, gee, what's up with white people anyway? I said, I have no idea what is up with us. And he says, well, they always be using the word great. I said, really? I was not aware of that. He goes, yeah, check this out. This busload of gabachos, white people, they come in, they see the bakery, and everything is clean, and the ovens, and everything's working. This place is great. And then they see homies, enemies, rivals working side by side. You fellas are great. And then they taste the bread. They go, wow, this bread, it's great. You go, how come white people always be using the word great? I said, I have no idea. And from that moment forward, every opportunity I could find, I told them how great they were, just to mess with them. And so cut to like 6 months later, and I drove up around 11 o'clock at night, and it was closing, and Roman sees me, and he runs to my car. He's excited about nothing ever, but he just can't get to my car fast enough. And he goes, damn, gee, check this out. You're not going to believe what happened. Well, he tells me that the night before, after his shift, he goes, picks up his 4-year-old daughter, Clarissa, at the babysitter. And he puts her in the car, and he drives to his humble little apartment where for the first time in his life, he's paying rent with honestly earned, clean, decent money. And he is a single father because the mother is somewhere lost in the streets. He unlocks the front door, and little Clarissa goes running down the hall, and she lands in this little sala, this little living room. And she stands there, and she plants her feet, she extends her arms, she takes the whole room in with her gaze. And she says, this is great. And he said, I thought she was turning white on me. And he gets down at eye level and he says, what's great? And little Clarissa, with great emotion, she clutches her chest and she says, my home. And as soon as he says this, both our eyes fill up with tears and we stare at each other for what felt like an eternity. And we watched as tears slowly rolled down each of our cheeks. And then finally I break the silence and I said, you did this. You've never had a home in your life, and now you got one. You did this. You used to be the biggest drug dealer in town. You stopped. You baked bread instead. You did this. You've never had a father in your life, and now you are one. And I hate to even have to tell you, but you're great. And I hate to even have to tell you that the first time I haven't told that story in a long time. First time I ever told it was, in fact, at his funeral some 4 months later. He was packing his car to go on a camping trip. 2 guys came to us part of the projects. They saw him. They must have said, he'll do, and they killed him. And I told that story, retrieved it from my memory bank because of the questions I kept being asked by his homies and his friends. They said, what's the point of doing good if that can happen to you? Which I thought was a good question. So I got up, I told that story, and I said, here was the point. That before Roman left us, he came to know the truth of who he was, that he was exactly what God had in mind when God made him. And then he became that truth. He inhabited that truth. And no bullet can pierce it. No 4 prison walls can keep it out. And death can't touch it because it's huge. In fact, it's great. We're all invited to do the same thing, what Pope Francis calls the culture of encounter. It's about relationships. It's the only thing that matters. Only connect, as the novelist says. And so we go to the margins and we imagine something different. We imagine a circle of compassion. And then we imagine nobody standing outside that circle because it's mutual. And then we choose to dismantle the barriers that exclude. And we try to create a community of kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. That you may be one, as Jesus says. For the vision still has its time. Presses on to fulfillment, and it will not disappoint. And if it delays, we wait for it. Thank you very much. Come on up here. Come on up here, son. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have exactly 7 minutes, and so we're going to just, because they said to do some Q&A. There are microphones there, but by the time you get up there, go ahead if you want to do it, or are you going to take a picture? Take a picture, okay. Or you can raise your hand, and I'll repeat the question for those at home. Anybody have anything? And if it's a really hard question, I'll hand it to Aurelio or Pablo. Do you have one? No. No, this was great, though. Okay, well, thank you. Yes. What's next? What are you all looking forward to? As an organization? Yeah. what's next? What are we looking forward to? Well, it should surprise nobody in urban centers that housing is such a huge issue. And so 70% of our population are, according to however you define this federally, are homeless. You know, they're couch surfing, they're living in their car. We try to handle that as best we can, from, trying to get them Section 8 and get them hooked up. And we have a couple kind of sober livings and halfway house situations. But now we're going to build temporary housing and permanent housing that will be kind of run on the model of Homeboy, a place of tenderness where people feel cherished. So if the idea is that a traumatized person is likely to cause trauma, then it has to be true that a cherished person will be able to find their way to the joy there is in cherishing themselves and others. And so our housing will be built on that. So they've just decided, with a lot of pressure from the community, not to rebuild Men's Central Jail, which is only, what would you say, 2 blocks from us? 3 blocks?
3 blocks.
Yeah, and so now we want, and there's a lot of property there because we bought our property years ago when it was nothing. But there's a lot of contiguous property where we're proposing to people a thing called Hope Village. So what would be the alternatives to incarceration? Housing, obviously, but also substance abuse, addressing that in a way that's humane, the mental health issue. It should surprise nobody that the largest mental institution on the planet Earth is LA County Jail. And how do we help heal? How do we decide not to punish wound and seek to heal it instead? So a youth reentry center. Right now we have a youth reentry center, which is in our old headquarters in Boyle Heights. There's an art academy, which is also in Boyle Heights. Maybe to bring and say to the world and to the country, okay, here's a model, which we're calling Hope Village, that maybe is an alternative to locking people up. So that's next. I'll be dead, but that's next, So, no, I don't mean that. Well, maybe I do a little bit, but I'm okay with death. Quick, somebody ask a question before I actually dig my grave. 3 minutes, we don't have to take, yes?
Yeah, when you talk about kind of the feeling of community that is at Homeboy Industries, I don't know if you could talk about like how, especially maybe Aurelio and Pablo, how do you experience that? Like what makes you feel that sense of community or welcome, or what is it about the place that makes that felt in a way that it's not at other places?
Exactly. What's the difference? What's it feel like a community at Homeboy? Pablo.
Various ways, maybe like just the kindness, like just the love and the kindness, how they treat you there, and just like older homies that's been through experiences, and then now they've grown from it, and then I just learn from them, just yeah. But to be honest, just the kindness. That's all it is, just being kind to one another it matters a lot.
That's perfect. Aurelio,
Yeah.
anything?
Just, holding a conversation with another homie from a different neighborhood, and then interacting, just like Pablo, I met him. We're good friends now. He's from a different neighborhood, and, we get along good,
Yeah, so kindness is the only non-delusional response to everything, which is to say that every other response is delusional, which is kind of liberating. Because then once you go, I'm stuck in resentment, delusional. I'm enraged, delusional. It's okay, but it's delusional. Kindness is the only non-delusional response to absolutely everything. And so it's not about right and wrong. A very wealthy person once said to me, "Don't these people know the difference between right and wrong?" It's not about right and wrong. It's about hope and healing. And you can only kind of be anchored there if you believe these two things, that every human being is unshakably good, no exceptions, and that we belong to each other, no exceptions. And then you can roll up your sleeves. Then we can actually make progress. And then, the poet writes, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, that sings the song without the words, and never stops at all. So we're all invited somehow to sing the song without the words and to never stop at all. But we're going to stop right now. So thank you all very much. I'm sorry.
You're fine. Let's give them a round of applause again. And thank you so much for sharing from your hearts. I know you guys were nervous, but he looked over at me. He said, "Did I do okay?" I said, "Well, you're great." I want to make sure that if you have others, or want to come back, it's tonight at 7 p.m. right here. So get ready. Okay. And then just to plug, our next Sacred of Creation speaker series will be Dr. Cornell West next Wednesday, the 15th. So thank you all for joining us for this time. We look forward to seeing some of you this evening, and have a blessed day.